it's Nagaland and it's the Northeast, which is usually the victim of many stereotypes everywhere else. So that was really one of the things that we really wanted to question, through this thing. And the second was actually looking at this as really a symbol which has kind of gone through this kind of, historical stereotyping across history actually in a way, outside its original form. Now, whether it was by the coming of the colonizers or the missionaries, it's always kind of gone through a whole history of stereotyping, which unfortunately is what we have kind of inherited in our gaze of, places in the Northeast, of people like must be living on trees, must be cutting heads, must be eating dog, the typical stereotypes that are there. So this was, so actually the shawl kind of became a symbol for us to, see, it was very scant kind of resources which we had around the shawl. This was an oral tradition. B, the original shawls, they were all kind of, they didn't actually exist. And this has to do actually with the nation state part of your question, because a lot of the, around that time, a lot of these heirlooms, family heirlooms are actually kind of, destroyed. A few people we spoke to separately off camera, they said that, they had to actually kind of dig holes and bury these things, so under the ground to protect them. So there are very, very few things which actually survive. And also this is not a kind of, there's no kind of written documentation done of these kind of traditions. So a lot of this was actually kind of coming out of the how do we then look at this particular symbol of, we are calling it of culture right now, but actually it was a part of their being at some point in time. And how it has transformed, morphed into a symbol of culture, morphed into a stereotype. So broadly, yeah, that's
I think I really like the way you brought about the owl, the people, they lost their script and then the missionaries come in and they make it out into the Roman script, and that's how they come through, their own language comes through the Roman script. That's also a kind of layering that you're also trying to talk about.
Yeah, I think which is very common to a lot of tribal communities in the Northeast, because a lot of them were kind of oral cultures. The first actually codification of language which happened, whether it's in places like Meghalaya, other places, Mizoram and all of them, most of them have the Roman script. So including the Bodos, for example, today, they all have the Roman script now. So it's again this byproduct of colonialism in a way, and of that kind of proselytization and colonialism. And of course, yeah, the story about the owl script being lost, that's a kind of owl myth which they kind of have, which they actually hold to be true. So therefore, then that was the other idea of how does this language then does not remain about actually something which is spoken or written, but actually then finds other forms. It finds, language becomes about something which is a pattern on a shawl, it becomes about a piece of music, it becomes about a song, it becomes a motif on a sculpture, so that for us that was also the idea of like looking at this question of language actually very central. And therefore, how does this language then hold up a question to this typical language of representation / stereotype that we are generally used?
Do you have any questions from the audience? You can pass the mic around.
So what was the? Am I audible there?
Audible to me.
Yeah. So what was the music?
Hello, sir. So, what was the music that you added in the post-credit scene? What can you tell me about the music that you added in the post-credit scene? What did it?
In the credits, the name of the song?
Yeah.
The song is called Black Cat Moan by John Mayall in the Blue Break.
And so why was that?
So it was there initially also in the film, if you would have noticed in the prologue, the title sequence of the film. So if you've noticed the kind of flow of images which happens in the title, from the title sequence, which is inside a museum, where we are looking at particular symbols of culture, and these symbols of culture are in an arena which is outside there. And also we wanted to completely decontextualize this so-called, typical meaning that is kind of associated with, we wanted to kind of, what I'm talking about, this question of the stereotype, we wanted to debunk it from the word go, so that then the rest of the film gets kind of filtered through that for you. So it's actually, were you here for the beginning of the film? So you would have noticed in the beginning, it just comes and repeats itself in the credit scene actually.
Related to what you mentioned earlier about the owl script and also wanting to debunk myths using a different rock music, I can speak Assamese, and the film is in Nagamese. The lady speaks something which is very familiar to me because I know Assamese. Is it how their oral language also developed because of this conflict of identities between not only colonization of their script, but also in terms of how they spoke because of the ethnic diversity there.
So Nagamese actually kind of came about for two reasons. Nagamese was actually the language which the Britishers kind of developed in order to communicate with these tribes, because each of these tribes have a different separate language. I mean, and today it's the kind of lingua franca amongst all the tribes, because they can't speak each other's language. Like an Awa will not speak, Sema will not speak Lota. So yeah, actually Nagamese was a kind of derivative from Assamese, because they didn't know how else to communicate. So it's a colonial product.